Hello, legends. Welcome to the 10th episode of Does It Hurt When You Do That? Don't Do That, the podcast where I talk to interesting people about the things they do and don't do that hurt. And I'll tell you what, 10 episodes. Wow, it is really cool that you're here and that I'm here and we've made it this far, and definitely something to celebrate. And what a way to celebrate than with this guest who essentially is an example of how this podcast came about. Basically, I met this guest, Dr. Shelia Nguyen, when I was at a cafe and we were just having a chinwag. Actually, I was having a really down day and kind of went to this cafe because I was like, oh, I just want some alone time. I just want to go and get a chai and read my book. And then somehow I'm fine about this, but I have the type of, apparently I've been told I've got very friendly eyes and I have strangers talking to me all the time. That, and I genuinely love to chat to people. So I look over at this woman. We're sitting across like a coffee bar together and we kind of make eye contact, and I think she complimented me on my jersey or something. And then I asked her how she was going, and then we kind of ended up talking and basically decided to write off the rest of our day because we were feeling straddled between what we should be doing and what we genuinely wanted to do. You know, I think it was between lockdowns, and we were kind of bonding over the inertia that you feel when you come out. And then she was like, oh, you're really interesting. What do you do? And I was like, oh, I'm a performer and I'm at university and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, what do you do? And she's like, just mentions off the hand, like, oh, I run an NGO, and then we're laughing and we even clink our coffee cups like we're cheersing so merrily. And then she's like, oh my goodness, JJ, this is such a great conversation. It's really nice to chat to you. And I was like, well, I'm glad you think so, because I was wondering if you might like to actually be a guest on my podcast. And at that point, I still didn't even really know if I was going to make this happen. And at the time, in my uncertainty, I was like, you know what, stuff it. Why don't I just tell this stranger about my idea of a podcast? Because I feel like my friends will always validate, well, not always. I've got some pretty scathing friends. Shout out to you, scathing friends. I thought, why not? I'll explain this podcast to this woman, Sheila, who's super bubbly, super cool. She said she runs an NGO. I reckon she probably knows what's what. Well, she said, yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, of course you're starting a podcast. And I don't know, it was really nice and a total testament to just when you kind of show up with what you've got and meet someone, I guess, as authentically as you can be without any pretenses. I didn't know that she is rated the top 100 women of influence by the Australian Financial Review. I didn't know that she has a PhD. I didn't know all this awesome stuff about her. We just kind of met. And so in this chat, we kind of gush over each other a little bit, like we're kind of fangirling each other. And I don't know, there's a part of me that's like, oh, what is that about? But also, and I'm going to probably do another episode about this, I am learning, especially for women, it's so important as humans that we really hold each other up. And that's what we're doing in this episode. So Sheila's talking about how we met. She's talking about being true to herself and what that really means beyond the cliche. She shares with me her experience as someone, she's American but of Vietnamese descent, of the xenophobia that she's experienced because of COVID. We talk about how to see our pain as growth, respect the pain, also known as hashtag RTP. We laugh a lot, and also we talk about some heavier things, and we kind of bond with the fact that that's kind of what we need to do in some ways to be in the dark. And for her, as someone who, her company, she's the CEO of Sports Environment Alliance, which is a non-for-profit organization that's used as the much loved culture of sport to raise awareness, share knowledge, and support action to protect the planet. So she's convincing people, I guess, in a realm that might not necessarily be associated with, the typical greenie life, how important it is, because if we don't have a planet, we don't have anywhere to play. We also talk about, on the topic of the environment, we talk about how my auntie won a golden rubbish bin because she was the best recycler. So amongst all of that, my legends, I'm so stoked to have you here. BTW, I've got some real special effect in there. It makes my microphone sound like a vinyl record. I think it was real early days of the podcast, but it doesn't get in the way of the great content because Sheila does most of the talking and you're not going to notice. And so thank you so much for all of your support, as you can hear by the fact that I'm talking at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I'm so stoked that we've made it to 10 episodes. I might actually take a little bit of a break for a bit because it's starting to get pretty crunchy in my life with assignments. I'm having to write about what truth is and all that sort of thing at the moment, and I haven't touched my guitar for weeks. But this has really got me juiced up and excited to be here and chasing all of this because I really appreciate all of your support. But yeah, I was thinking to myself, like, does it hurt when you do that? Don't do that. I know, don't cook yourself because you're doing a passion project that requires a lot more editing time than what you expected. So I might have a couple of a week or so, maybe a bit more off. I've got a whole bunch more interviews in the bank, so hang out, make sure you follow so that you know what's coming up. Also, if you're like, oh my goodness, I miss the sound of your voice, you can listen through the backlog, or I will do another one, no doubt. So I hope that this finds you feeling great, inspired to talk to strangers and really make those great connections, as I leave you with the change maker, the visionary, the absolute bubble of a human being that is Shelia Nguyen. We have well and truly got the ball rolling. So You're my guest today. Who are you?
Who am I? I ask myself that question every day. Who am I? I'm Shelia. I'm Shelia Nguyen, or Wing, if you want to say it proper, Vietnamese.
How do you say it?
Yes, that's how you say it.
Wing.
Yeah, like a bird's wing. This is how I try to explain it to my friends. Is if you want to say it proper Vietnamese, it's like a bird's wing, but elongated. So wing with a kind of like dip in it. Oh, go girl. That's right. Shelia Nguyen. And I am American, living in Australia, and now Australian. And I've had the privilege to bump into you in a cafe, and now I'm here. What more would you like to know, JJ?
Well, it's a question that I open with my guests because I think it's very interesting. Who am I? You say that you ask yourself every day. So does that mean that there's a different answer every day?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, you know what? My dad is he's probably formerly a Buddhist monk in his previous life. And he talks to me in like Yoda language. So sometimes he says things like that, but like much more not straightforward, I would say. So he'd say, Shelia, every day is my birthday. I'm like, yeah, oh yeah, right. Tell me more. You're reborn every day. We could be someone different every day. And so that's stuck in my head, like to think, well, you can make different choices every day, every minute, every second. So who are you? But there are obviously some core things like that make me who I am. And I guess for me, I someone who grew up in an urban space and constantly looking for ways to reconnect to our natural world, because I think having not had it as I was growing up, it makes you almost seek it out more. And it's a real privilege, I think, to live in Australia because, and especially where I live in the eastern suburbs at the moment, it's a lot of green space, so I can do that more. But I think that's me at the core, someone who grew up as a city rat, but is seeking to be a country mouse. Is that right? Or forest rodent. Maybe some other animal.
I think a country mouse is really sweet, A country mouse doesn't need to come in your house. It just kind of roams around the outside. It's got enough food in the wild.
Yeah.
So, I think a country mouse is a good way to be. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks, JJ. I need your validation on that.
I'm imagining like the mice that Snow White has as like friends of hers, that's just like calm and
yeah, singing, dancing around her while she's singing. All right, cool. I can imagine that.
Okay, and if I was to say to you, does it hurt when you do that? Don't do that. What would the that be? What is something that you do that, kind of hurts?
Kind of hurts. Oh, where can I begin? I think not being, this sounds very cliche, but forgetting to be true to yourself. It's easy in life to want to please people and to constantly seek out how do I support and to connect and to help other people. But at that same time, it hurts myself in some ways when I forget myself in that action or in that conversation or in that thought. So I think that that's something that really hurts me and has hurt me a lot over my life. Less so recently, as you get older, and you feel more secure, and you're a bit more thing. And then that allows you and it gives you that sense of freedom that you can say, hey, I don't care that I'm wearing pajamas in the street during lockdown. I don't care. Who are these people? They're not going to care about what I'm doing. And if they do, it doesn't matter. But as long as I'm in that conversation. So I think that's what hurts. Not remembering me in that conversation. So I think, you opening up who are you is a good question to follow or to start and then follow.
Thank you. I'm glad that you found it that way. For someone who has very little planning of this kind of thing, I'm really glad that I was able to get a good response. I mean, and that's why I got you on here, because we met across a counter and had a deep dive, and I think so. That's so interesting to hear. Someone who, it's great because I met you and then I Googled you and I was like, holy smokes, she's got a PhD and you've been rated the top 100 women of influence by the Australian Financial Review. And I love that it's like we met as two people. But then to hear what you were saying about that it hurts when you don't stay true to yourself and when you're worrying about what other people think, and that prohibits you from the freedom of connection. I'm wondering, what are your anchor points, or do you have anything that grounds you and reminds you to stay true, or even little phrases or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I love that. One to your comment, I felt the same way about you. I was like, this JJ, she's stage celebrity. And I met her just randomly because she's wearing this cool sparkly sweater that caught my eye, and her face matched that sparkle and joy, and then she was named Joanna Joy, which I thought was just crazy. The whole that morning to me was like I was floating on clouds, just walking around as if I were, like you said, Cinderella, just la 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 la. Was it Cinderella?
You can be whichever Cinderella one you want.
Whatever, one of those princesses with the country mice hanging around. I loved that. I thought that was so brilliant, the way we met. And I think people, I know this is a departure from your question, but I think more people need to meet that way. I feel like we've lost that sense of connection and ability to, like you said, freedom to talk to people just as human to human. I think that's one of the things I actually really miss about living in America back in the day, not today necessarily. and as well early days when I first moved here in Australia, is that people would say hello. Like, I think people were a bit weirded out when I said hello to them on the street here in Australia, because I think people weren't used to that. But, I think that people from the country or people in Australia, they had that sense too. In America, it was very pervasive, this idea of you would say hello to strangers. You walk by them and you say hello, good morning, good afternoon. And that's just culture, and we nowadays, because of, and I said this to you when we met, is that we have our masks on, and it's hard to connect with people. And you would think, wouldn't it force you to connect even more, because all you can see are the eyes? But instead, people put their head down. Not everybody, but a lot of people. But anyway, going back to your question, what was the question?
It's okay. We're going here, there, and everywhere, because there was one aspect that you briefly touched upon that it kind of stuck with me, and about people meeting and talking to each other. And you said you felt like, as someone of Vietnamese descent, you'd experience xenophobia and kind of like people not wanting to acknowledge you. And so we will get back to the question. I think I remember it. If we don't, that's fine. We'll still have something interesting. Would you be able to talk about what that feels like and what that's like?
Yeah, what does it feel like? It's a very deep question, JJ. Like, how does it feel to it's like manyfold, but I think twofold in the first instance, is you feel upset in the instance that, like, oh, I'm human, I'm not in it, like some sort of diseased individual, because I represent a particular ethnicity that has been, through media, connected and linked to the origins of COVID. So that's the first part. You sort of feel hurt, but then you feel even more hurt, me personally, and this goes back to your question of like what hurts, is that I accept that. And that's not true to me. True to me is to speak on behalf of the powerless, or speak when things are unjust. I know you weigh up the kind of pros and cons on that instance. Like, you don't want to sort of rise to every action and be like, what do you think, I'm diseased? You don't go to that extent every single time. But I think there needs to be an outlet for me where I can transmute or transfer that feeling of guilt of not having stood up or clarified or addressed the injustice around that is deeper than just the fact that people move away from me or make comments like, oh, your disease, go back to where you come from. And that's only happened just in the last couple of weeks. It's not like it's months or years ago. So I think, and it's throughout my whole life, and I've always, you asked that question, who am I? And I'm always every day thinking about it. Is that I've been trying to understand the relationship between being ethnically different from the mainstream culture, or the hegemony of that particular place. So I've been doing a lot of research, like reading a lot and trying to understand and connect with that. But yeah, in terms of feeling, because that's different than thinking, the feelings are of disappointment in the first instance, and even more disappointment in the second instance. But I think I'll try to figure out a solution. After this, we'll figure it out. I think, yeah, you and me, JJ, we got brains, 2 brains. We'll figure it out.
It really sucks that you feel like you have to change it, though, and that it's causing you pain and you guilt. I am very fortunate that I've seldomly been in a position where I am treated as a minority and unable to stand up for myself. Okay, if we go back to the story that I had about when I was slightly disabled because I couldn't talk, that it's your responsibility, and that then you feel bad about it, because it takes a lot of strength and power to be able to stand up in a situation like that. And looking after one's self-safety, I think, is probably the most important. So if I could come and get a little sponge and wash away that guilt for you, I definitely would.
Thanks, JJ. Aw, we're gonna be friends for a long time. I can tell already. You know what? That's a really good point, JJ. Like, I totally feel you. And when you were saying that, I was like nodding my head because I get it. I totally agree with you. And that is an injustice in itself. You know, the fact that the one who has the least powerful voice has to exert and find and scrape for power to change the way the people who do have power think about the world around them and the people who live in that world with them. And it was so fascinating that you said that, because there was this conversation we had with someone, and I can't name this person, but someone who works with refugees. And, you know, the question that was asked was, what can we do, you know, to help the efforts? And, you know, this person kind of covered a number of like the travesties and the tragedies that are happening around the world for those people who are stateless and those people who are refugees seeking for safety. And the response was, you know, people like you who can speak on their behalf. But it's like, why, again, the onus is back on people like me, you know, versus people like, you know, who are in big, strong political positions, or those who already have the, like you said, privileges that enable them to quickly scale change, or change in behavior, change in thought, ideas, attitudes. I'm a realist and an optimist. And the optimist is things can change. The reality is, if we want it to change, I have to participate actively and not wait for it to be solved. And so I realize I live in this system and I need to figure out how to navigate that and leverage and push and pull, however, to make sure that, like I said, the powerless are heard or acknowledged or thought of, etc., etc. But I'm so glad you said that.
For someone who was saying, oh, it hurts when I'm not true to myself, this is why we're doing a podcast, because you can just listen to that last 10 seconds back and be like, oh my goodness, I am a boss.
Boss. You know what?
That you're seeing that power, and you're seeing that responsibility, and recognizing that it's not going to be easy for you, you know, but the space is there. And yeah, I wanna you can make as much noise as you like about it. Far out. I've got a loud voice. You can tell me what to say and I'll say it too.
I love you. You know what? Thank you. And I actually will, JJ. Like, at some point we'll have that conversation on the side, because I think you have a platform and you speak to so many people. I'd love you to carry a voice and a torch for all sorts of different issues, but ones that resonate best with you, you know, ones that you can carry. Because of course, like, all of us can't be everything for everyone and speak on every issue, because it dilutes that message. But I think if there's something that does kind of, you know, tickle your fancy, and I'd love to kind of see where that goes. And I just remembered the question you asked me about what are like some mantras or some things that ground you or anchor you. I'm going to take the clip. You give me that clip, the 10-second one, and I'll use that, because that just puts it on my to-do list again, of things that I would love to. I have the opportunity. What was it that we said?
Whether you want to, or you can, or you need to.
So what was it that it was the
could.
Yeah. I could develop some anchors. I think that's, but I feel almost like people like you are my anchors in a sense, you know, because you ask good questions and you're curious, and that gives me the opportunity to sort of like share that purpose, or share that sense of who I am. Not in an ego-driven way, but more like a, hey, you know, like, let's do this together. How do we do this? Like, I'm telling you now, and then you look like you're interested. Like, hey, like, how are we gonna, you know, address this problem or this solution, create a solution? Thank you for being my anchor, JJ.
Yeah, hopefully not one that's going to sink the ship. It's great, because we can do, like, that's what I really want, is we can do all of this whilst also having a great time, you know, and because for me this week, I have been immersing myself in a bunch of different podcasts and learnings and things, which have had a lot of anti-racist, anti-fat shaming kind of things in them, which has been great. But then there's a part of me that's like, oh, I think I need to have a little bit of a laugh now. And remember when I I met you and we were like, whoa, this conversation's really deep. I was like, we can talk about lip gloss if you want to. It's okay. We can do both, and they can all coexist, because sometimes we need to just swim out of the depths for a while and like have a little look around to what else is on the surface, and then dive back down again once our lip gloss is applied.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the flex, and the flex between, especially for us, like I think we're very similar in the sense that we're able to kind of move between the spectrum of the feelings, the conversations, the like energy. That's important, because it's like the light is your rest. It's like the, what's it called? I know we're sort of bouncing around, but like yin and yang, where there's like a little spot of light and dark, and there's a little spot of dark and light, and that's what is like. That blew my mind, by the way, JJ. I'm just learning stuff. Like when I talk, I actually learned I'm like, whoa, that Sheila from like 2 seconds ago who's just talking is way smarter than the one I am right now. But
that was really wise. I was like, ooh.
no, I'm going to blow your mind. So over the last few weeks, I've been taking a course. It's like this Harvard class on sustainable business strategy. I have to say that because it sounds so wanky otherwise. But in that, there's this main concept of the wheel of change. And the wheel of change is like, it basically is like a weighted wheel, right? Like there's components that sort of keep it going. I think that's the yin and yang, isn't it? It's like the light and the dark sort of is that extra weight that keeps it going, like in harmony. That's why we can keep moving. Like the JJ wheel, the Sheila wheel is like, it requires a little bit of a weight to keep the momentum going. Because if we sit too heavy in one area, I think both of you like are at it. I don't know. I can't speak on your behalf. But when I was younger, I was very prone to depression. And it's just because I was so weighted in focusing on that dark piece. And then I could be really like high and like, and not give myself the rest, and I would burn myself out. And so the point is sort of bringing that wheel together. And that wheel of change, the one that like I was referencing, is all about purpose-driven work, and I think that mirrors that. Like in order for people who have a purpose or an intent to survive, is that it equates to that wheel of change.
For me in the past, I wasn't able to probably sit in the dark very much. I would mostly just want to be in the light. And as we've been doing, we've been mixing it up. What's the ice cream? Like we've been yin yanging.
Yin yanging.
We've been hanging in the yin yang.
That's so funny. That's the hashtag for this. Yin yanging. Yin yanging. We've been yin yang. It's not like you chilling. We're yin yanging.
And well, because I worry though that I might invalidate things by bringing too much yang in, by bringing too much fun and joy into something, that it then takes away from the gravity and the seriousness. And I really like what you said. Maybe it's just because we're girl crushing on each other. It's like a little confirmation bias, is that by having it round and that the weight kind of goes in each direction, that is, I guess, a way to make change. We studied that if you had a scale of how similar someone was to you, if they've got an idea that's different, if they only sit a couple of degrees towards different on the scale, they're more likely to listen to you. So, and change. So, for example, like say, and I'd be really curious what you probably know more about this than me in terms of like environment and sustainability. So say someone is like works in a corporate job, earns a lot of money, is quite detached from nature, and then suddenly they're needing to maybe change their life and reduce their plastic or fuel emissions or whatever, change their bank and things like that. For that message to be the most effective for them, it probably wouldn't be the stereotypical greenie who dumpster dives for food and all that sort of thing. And I love that, rides a bike, and because that's really far away from who they are, they can't see themselves being like that. But if the person looks similar to them, maybe has a similar job, but has great Tupperware, then they're more likely maybe to take that message on. And so in terms of people who are able to bring light into the dark, important things and make it approachable, for me, that's maybe going to have more effect.
It's really interesting because yes, that you are right, JJ. Like that's obviously that's science, social science says, and on the topic of environment, just like from the work that I do, one of the things that we talked about, like seeing the reality and optimism. So the optimism is like my tree hugging hippie, like I'd like to wear a potato sack and live on an island. I don't care, about things per se. And then I have to wear like the corporate gear when I talk to certain demographics, it's like to be able to connect with them or them connect with me. And also the language too. The language is quite important about that because I see this all the time. When I see the spectrum of those working in planetary work, those who are in that like far left wing activist, that group, they're like, we don't understand why, say our group who I work with is sport, why don't they do more, or why aren't they doing this? And the conversations they have, it's like two very different languages they speak, and it's like no one hears that other person, just like you said, like it will not resonate with them, they will not listen to it, they will, or less likely to be influenced by what they're saying. And so, yeah, 100%, like getting closer to the way that they look and how to get them to feel connected to what you're saying. They'll be more open to that. And I'll say something about the light and the dark in a minute, but like as well, proximity, like, which is really crazy. There's another study that shows that if you knew what your neighbor was doing in terms of waste, like you're talking about waste, you are more likely to try to compete with that person or be like that person. So like, oh, that person's recycling like, less or more than I am. Like I'm going to start trying to do more to either match them or exceed. And that's because they probably, by proximity, people who live near each other maybe are similar to each other because they choose the same area of like where they live. And so that totally kind of echoes what you're saying. But that light and dark piece, we spend a lot of time in like my work world talking about the light, like in the light, as opposed to in the dark, because there's too many people speaking in the dark. And that's very important. That sort of weights the wheel of change, the need to have that voice and still have that the weight of that. But also you need the momentum of the light and like success stories and what things are people doing. What's the leadership? What's the celebration? What's cool? What's innovative? Like what's happening, on the edge of things to make people feel excited about a topic that sometimes people feel oftentimes very challenged by or judged by, and no one wants to feel judged.
That's it. I was laughing because, I was smiling, sorry, because when you were talking about like what your neighbor does in terms of recycling. So my auntie, she lives in Christchurch. Now all my family's going to know who I'm talking about. My auntie we've got hoarding in my family. She got awarded the golden bin for being the best recycler in like the whole town. It's like claim to fame, golden bin winner. And I was just imagining, my neighbors need to know how much recycling I'm doing.
Wow, that is so crazy. So like, is that an annual award, or is that like you get it and you get it for life? Like that bin is yours forever?
Yeah, I don't know actually, because it would be weird if you had to like give up the bin. I wouldn't want to be giving up my bin. If I got awarded the golden bin, I'd be holding that title.
It's like an Oscar. But the thing is, like, if you don't perform well after that, like no one's going to take your Oscar away. But like in recycling, I think that's a bit questionable. Wouldn't you want to take it away? Because it looked weird if she filled the golden recycling bin with trash. That just wouldn't look very good.
That's true. I know that in some neighborhoods, I think in New Zealand, you get a sticker on your bin if your recycling is sorted correctly.
Isn't that funny?
What a great incentive.
I just love that. Like a sticker can go so far. Like, and isn't it amazing?
That's the way to do it. Yeah. Are you ready for the next question?
Yeah, hit me.
Segueing between questions is always awkward, but I think we've kind of come to a little breathing point, so we can take a breath and be ready for the next question.
I'm in the JJ Podcast Olympics here.
Stretch out. I play the Rocky theme song in the background. on. No, it's great because it's nice not to be linear about these sorts of things.
No,
so,
life's not linear. Oh, you're funny.
Okay, so the question is, if I was to say to you, does it hurt when you do that? What is something that might be a bit painful of some kind that you do? So it could be like a habitual thing, or it could be a mental thing, or you could even go anywhere.
I mean, there's so many wheres that I could go. I try. It's not that life is. Actually, can I say on that point, I might depart a little bit from what your question is, but a little bit of pain is very good for you. They always talk about growth coming from pain. Not all pain, but some pain can result in you growing as a person. And I know just, in my life, I've had lots of pain, lots of really traumatic pain. And I feel like it's made me a different person than I could have been or would have been. So I look at things that might cause a little bit of pain as opportunities to try something else new, or learn a new skill, or be more patient, or whatever it is. And I guess it'd be hard to pin something that I would say, because I do that very often. I do it as kind of daily practice, really, is that there will always be something that's painful that you accept. And I guess that's maybe my answer is, I won't say one example, but the fact is the message I would like to share is probably life is going to be, there will be pain in that life, but to always see that pain in a way that allows you to endure the pain in a way that's beneficial or productive, or without vain. Because I think, some people will experience it and either ignore it, experience it, or then spend too much energy negatively on it. And I think those two ways really take away from life, your opportunity to live fully. And live fully means not like, hey, throwing dollar bills out of the car and like, driving really fast one and whatever. It's living fully. I mean by that, not allowing it to hold you back too much. It's, of course, you're human. You're going to feel pain. You're going to feel sadness, and you acknowledging that is really important. But as well, like, in addition to acknowledging that, like, what can you gain from that? What did you learn from that? And I know, again, it sounds very cliche, but it's really helpful. It's a really helpful way for me to get past a lot of things. Which brings me to one quote, which I heard just recently. I thought was so good. Again, from the Course. It was so excellent.
Great.
She said, one of the lecturers was saying, there's a Buddhist saying that they say, the good thing is that you're not dead. The bad thing is that you can't die because you're not fully living. It's like, wow. It's like blows your freaking mind, doesn't it?
Can you say that one more time?
Yeah. So the good thing is that you're not dead, but the bad thing is you can't die because you're not fully living. What? Like, what? It just that I have to, like, I was walking through the CBD the other day or whatever, and I was just like, I was reciting it in my head, trying to really understand it. And it's so powerful in so many ways, you can sort of apply it in different ways. But the point is that fully, that was like kind of the emphasis, I think, for me, is to like understand, what does living fully mean? And I think, to your point, things hurt, but you'll allow it to hurt because you've got to gain something from that hurt.
Indeed.
Is that too deep and meaningful?
No, it's
this
not.
early in the morning.
No, it's good. It's nothing like waking up with some existentialism.
You're funny.
About living fully, because I mean, death. Yeah, I think.
How are you feeling? Are you feeling like you're living fully, JJ?
I think it's fluctuating. I think that I'm getting closer to living fully. Yeah. I'm really fortunate that through pain, through experiencing the recent loss of my dad that I got to see what it means to live fully, you know?
When did
And
he
like
pass, JJ?
at the end of March, 4 months ago yesterday.
My God.
And through seeing the way that he lived, he had cancer and he had it for 15 years. And so that, like, the way that he lived was 100% fully.
Really?
Yeah.
What's your dad's name?
His name is Nicholas Anthony Simmons.
Go, Nick, living life.
Yeah, fully.
Yeah. Throwing dollar bills out of the convertible?
Well, he lived most of his life really frugally, but then in his last couple of years, he was just like, oh, you know, life is for living fully. And then he would, you know.
Can't take your money when you with you, can you?
He would just like go and get pies for lunch and milkshakes and have great times at cafes and everything like that. He lived a very, but what I was saying is, like you said, that the pain of going through, you know, the various stages of grief that you go through when a family member has cancer, and then, you know, the roller coaster that is, and then the death of a parent, that is showing me, it's like a veil has been pulled away of how to live life.
Wow.
I still don't know how to look at it yet, though. So that's why I'm seeing a psychologist.
Yeah.
And I think that the blessings, like I'm someone who I kind of worry, I guess, about silver linings culture in some ways. You know, we talked briefly about empathy, and I sometimes worry that we devalidate things by silver lining it straight away instead of, you know, people, Brene Brown talks about it. People go, you know, my dad's just like, oh, at least you had a great relationship with him.
I know, you need to sit in the feeling.
Yeah, like, man, that really sucks.
Yeah.
However, the pain of him knowing that I mean, we're all going to die, but like his time on earth was going to be, he had a terminal illness, it was going to be shorter than maybe what his life expectancy would have been. What that taught him and what that taught us as a family in terms of how to relate to each other, how to relate to other people, what to believe in or how to believe, how to travel the world, you know, how to hold each other tightly and love fiercely. Like you said, does it hurt when you do that? Do that, you know, recognize that this has got something to teach you. And instead of denying it, because denial is sometimes easier than walking through it, you know, take it on and take what treasure it's got there. Yeah, I actually, with my psychologist, we were talking about the depth. He was talking about like what it's like going deep within yourself and what is lying in there, you know, and because it's going to be hard, like you find the stuff. And I was like coming up with this visualization of the ocean. And on the surface of the ocean, it's beautiful, you know, there's waves, there's seagulls, it's all good. And you can live there and you can appreciate that. But if you dive down deeper, it's scary, it's dark, it hurts, there's pressure in your ears, you know, there's all kinds of creatures, but I hear there's beautiful creatures and there might be treasure. You know? And mermaids, like there might be mermaids, we don't even know, you know, they haven't found out how deep the ocean is. Mermaids could still exist.
Dude, I'm there for you. There for you, bro.
So I think that you're right, and it's, I guess, like we talked about, the yin and the yang, and finding the balance of recognizing the pain without denying it or unvalidating it, but also recognizing that it can teach us.
Yeah.
And it does lead to change and growth.
Yeah. I love your distinction about, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that with me, JJ. I know that's not an easy thing for you to share. So I appreciate that. And I'm very happy that Nick lived his life with milkshakes and pies for lunch. Sounds really yummy.
As well as like good home cooking and fruit and playing golf and all that sort of stuff.
Ooh, golf. You know, a lot of good golf in New Zealand. But yeah, I think what you said about that, you know, silver lining quickly, silver lining quickly is like definitely a mechanism lots of people use to dismiss, like you said, invalidate, or it doesn't give the respect of the pain. Respect the pain. I think that's probably what I'm trying to say here, is that you got to acknowledge it and really fully acknowledge, like, hey, this hurts and this does hurt because, and then allow that to then teach you something, as you said. But the silver linings, like it gets dismissed too quickly, isn't it? Dismisses the pain, and it's always like F off. It's reflective of like the generational kind of, how people talk about attention spans and like the transactional approach that younger people take to life. It's like, oh, it's just pain, like, just like dismiss, like scroll. Life is just like, why don't you just like sit with that one post in your life and like kind of, imprint that, because you won't like you said, you're not fully living because you're not fully feeling that either. But silver lining it just dismisses it, dismisses the post. I think that's really interesting in itself.
I think I just came up with RTP, respect the pain. RTP.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we've got like so many t-shirt slogans, like, sustainably made t-shirt slogans. Like we're gonna have a company. This is legit, like, yin yangin. Yeah, that must exist. I have to Google search that after that.
Yeah.
And ultimately,
RTP, yeah. Ultimately, I think, we're doing the best we can with what we've got, right? So to silver linings, because we're not taught to RTP.
Yeah.
I think that's also all G, I guess, and just hope that you're going to bump into someone or look for other people in your life who are able to teach us and show up and know that it's okay to show up with that.
RTP is like RIP, like rest in peace, respect the pain.
If you were to have something, okay, so we talked about t-shirts, right? So what would your slogan on a t-shirt, if the world was given at birth, or maybe like when everyone turns 15, they get given this t-shirt? Normally I say if you could put a message on a billboard, or you could send a notification to people's inbox.
Whoa.
But if you were able to give people a t-shirt that said something that they wore inside out, so the message goes on the inside, what's your slogan, or what would it be? What would it say?
Can I use one that
Absolutely.
exists in the world? Wow. I think I know this is a so overused word, but I don't care, because it is exactly what I hope people remember in everything they say and do and feel. It's respect. I think respect, is like, and I have a, I have in every conversation, I have to include that, in some sort of form, way, or tone, as a takeaway. I think if I really evaluated every conversation I have in my life, or had in my life, and continue to have, is always undertoned by this idea, like, how do we get people to think and feel and be more respectful, not just to each other, but to our natural world, and that is literally the biggest challenge, the problem that undergirds everything that we talk about, around the sustainable development goals, and stateless people, and climate change, and greed, and it just boils down to that one word. Like, I think if people actually made choices in and around their life and in the work that they do with respect as a foundation, then I don't think we would have all the challenges that we have.
Respect. Thank you. Sensational.
What's yours, JJ?
No one's asked me that, actually.
You can't be just asking questions like, willy-nilly, not being asked yourself.
You can't ask questions willy-nilly. Yeah. I think that it's probably changes, and I think that I would. Yeah. So in this moment, I'd probably say, so there's this African philosophy, Ubuntu, which means I am because you are. And that is something that has helped me a lot. So, for example, you and I, we've been girl crushing and being like, but you're great. You're great. But you
are.
Yeah.
No, we are. We're amazing.
Instead of, me, I definitely, in the past, before I kind of thought about this philosophy, would be like, oh my God, like I can't, whoa, she's incredible, and how can I talk? And it's kind of like, if I see that in you, then that must be also in me. And then similarly, though, times in which there is difficulty and despair and everything in me, I, for example, have had a pretty difficult relationship with my body image. So there'd be days in which I'm really ruminant about it. I know.
You're like a freaking model. Like, give me a break.
Well, we all.
Anyway,
that's right.
That's your.
So there'll be days in which I'll be really ruminant about it. And I'll be like, if I am this, then you must be that on some scale at some point. If I've gone to the depths of sadness, I'm not alone. That's happened before with someone else at some point in their life. And I guess to combine that with respect, so if I can be respectful, then you are too. And like that would be great and ideal, So I think that's what I would maybe have. And or just peace, like just the word peace.
Okay, well, aside from podcasts and stage business, like we've got our t-shirt business to get going off the ground, right, JJ? Watch out, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to hit your stores very soon.
There's this amazing new piece of clothing come out called a t-shirt. And what we're going to do what no one's ever done. We're going to put cool stuff on the front.
No, it's not on the front.
Inside. Yeah, because then the message gets right to your heart. I like that. It's been an absolute joy to have you on today. Thank you so much.
Joy.
Yep, we know about it.
Joy. It's been a joy to be with you.
You've got to get to your Olympic meeting.
Olympic meeting.
Is there anything else that you want to share with the people in our last little 45 seconds?
I would say listen to this podcast. It's really good. JJ, I think you draw a lot of good things out of people in these conversations. I had a lot of fun. Looking forward to many more deep dives across the table at a counter. Yeah, over karaoke. I love it. You're on. Everyone, you've heard that now. It's been announced. So we've got witnesses. See us at the local karaoke bar.
Thank you so much. This episode was not sponsored by any kind of karaoke bar, but if anyone does, then they can. You have an amazing day, Sheila.
Thanks, JJ. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening and sharing your time with me this week. For this podcast to continue, I could really use your support. If you enjoyed the episode, please screenshot it and put it on your social media, send the episode to your friend or family, and if you can click subscribe to the episodes, they'll fall into your algorithm like your old friend JJ popping into your ear every week. I appreciate it so much. And as well as listening to this podcast, you can just keep on listening to your own wisdom by asking the questions, big and small, like, does it hurt when you do that? Don't do that.